Live from the Computer History Museum in the heart of Silicon Valley, it's theCUBE, covering OpenStack Silicon Valley 2016. Brought to you by Mirantis. Now, here are your hosts, John Furrier and Lisa Martin.
Okay, welcome back everyone. We are here live in Silicon Valley for the OpenStack SV, or OpenStack Silicon Valley, hashtag OSSV16. I'm John Furrier at SiliconANGLE Media. This is theCUBE, our flagship program, where we go out to the events and extract the signal from the noise. I'm joined with my co-host, Lisa Martin, next 2 days, wall-to-wall coverage. Our next guest is Lisa Caywood, Director of Ecosystem Development for the OpenDaylight project. Welcome to theCUBE.
Thank you very much for having me.
So the Linux Foundation's got all these different events, SDN, OpenDaylight, really not a lot of hype. It's all down and dirty right now. Reality is there, the rubber's hitting the road.
Absolutely.
Some say it's boring. Boring, it means it's good, right? I mean, this is kind of what...
You know, it's not boring though. I mean, I formally joined the Linux Foundation about a month ago. And I've been doing the rounds with the community, with our members, with people on the user side, and just understanding what they're working on and what they're doing. There's some neat stuff coming up. One of the things that I was most excited about, and I've been talking about this for several years, was SDN is a tool. It's not a goal, it's a tool. It's how you get to bigger, larger goals. One of the early calls I had with one of our silver members, who is a sort of systems integrator, they said that exact same thing to me, and they said, OpenDaylight is at the core of one of our solutions, but that's not what we're selling people. What we're selling people is IoT solutions. We're working on smart city initiatives. We're working on things for energy companies, things like this. That was just music to my ears.
I'm tongue-in-cheek when I say boring. In fact, when we first started doing theCUBE in 2010, it was EMC World. At least you could appreciate this. I met Dave Vellante and I called storage snorage, because that's what they used to call it. It was very boring. But it wasn't boring, because boring was the beginning. Now we're on a wave of massive storage innovation. But I want to bring that back, because it is kind of tongue-in-cheek. OpenDaylight doesn't get the fanfare as a project vis-a-vis other projects, because of the things are always shifting in the market. But the early adopters have had success there, and I want you to take a minute to talk about what that means, because again, it is reality, some good things are happening, real proof points from early adopters. Could you share, take a minute to share that aspect of what that means and what it is?
Yeah, so there's been sort of a fairly predictable wave of adoption. The really early adopters tended to be telcos for a variety of reasons, and the real reason for people to go to the trouble of adopting SDN very early in its maturation cycle is if the network is really critical to their business. For carriers, it obviously is. And they are under tremendous competitive pressures in terms of Web 2.0 companies coming in from one side, new business models coming in from cloud providers and so forth. And so they really have needed to get agile quickly, and SDN has been something that they have very readily embraced. The telco market in particular has really been very excited about open source. And they've been, AT&T has, never loses an opportunity to tell people that they are going the open source route. They can do that because they have to have a lot of developers on staff. What's been really interesting, especially with the upcoming release for OpenDaylight, is that many of the projects within the upcoming release were actually proposed by user organizations, mostly telcos. They were working with OpenDaylight in test, in some cases moving things into production, and started to see new opportunities for features that they needed, tooling that they were interested in having, that they wanted to build, not just necessarily within themselves.
So catalysts to new opportunities.
Catalysts to new opportunities. In some cases they built it sort of within themselves and kept that for themselves because it was a competitive advantage. Other things like you can find this on the wiki. AT&T has proposed the Yang sort of developer kit. And they're sharing it with the community so that everybody can sort of take their own Yang models and build from there. So there's this whole ecosystem that's starting to emerge based on all of that early work and early innovation within the user community.
Speaking of user communities, OpenDaylight, you've got a community with 27 different user groups, 2,500 members, 600 strong developer community. Talk to us a little bit more, extrapolate or expand on collaboration. That was one of the themes of the keynote this morning, was one of the keys to being successful for users of Open Cloud is collaboration. Talk to us a little bit more about this sort of feedback loop that you just mentioned with AT&T, going to be featured at your event at the end of September. Talk to us about how that feedback loop happens and how quickly that information is taken in terms of agility to be utilized and shared to enable other, even non-telcos, to be successful.
Yeah. So one of the things that OpenDaylight did early on, which I thought was really important, was they set up a user advisory group. And that was important because early on, a lot of the users were sort of in wait and consume mode. They were waiting for the developers to actually put stuff together that they could use. They weren't necessarily getting directly involved in getting their hands dirty themselves, but they wanted to have input. And because it's an open source project, there was an obvious opportunity to do that. So we bring the advisory group together. We put them together with the project leads within the community, and it's just a very, very open session. All the sessions are open to the public. And so anybody can go and look at the minutes, look at the call. And so that feedback loop is not just within those particular group of individuals. It's not stuff that's happening behind closed doors, but it's out in the community, it's out in the open, it's out in public, and that can help spur further ideas in the broader world at large.
Absolutely, kind of going along another theme of this morning's keynote, which was innovation. Can you talk to us about service providers and enterprises using OpenDaylight to solve key network challenges that are related to automated service delivery, network resource optimization? What's some of the impact that OpenDaylight is having in that community?
So on the telco side, again, it has been a lot about speeding up service delivery. Saving on WAN costs has been a big motivator for a lot of people. Inter data center connect, DCI. So tying together a lot of their operations in a logically decentralized or practically decentralized but logically centralized manner, so that they can manage their whole operation in a much more flexible way.
So I want to ask you about Open Cloud and Open SDN, because this is where SDN has kind of been a very geeky, in the trenches kind of technology. Obviously the success cases of NFV, we've seen telcos with the pressure not only for over-the-top business model, but real scale on the innovation side have kind of come down to the plumbing, which is SDN lives. But I want you to share with us your view of the value as you collect the proof points, as you guys go to the next level with OpenDaylight. What is the value of an open SDN vis-a-vis closed SDN or other, or is there a closed SDN, or can you just parse that out for us and help us understand that?
Yeah, so I would look at it from a couple of different lenses. One is acquisition model, and that's sort of the obverse of the different approaches to SDN in the market. There is, shall we call it, hardware-defined SDN that is
SDN.
locked. Well, I mean, so there's SDN that is packaged within sheet metal, right?
Yep.
And you have to buy a big switch in order to get the software capabilities. So that's one model. The other is purely software, but proprietary software, and it's been packaged with a whole software stack that goes along with that.
Yep. That runs on certain hardware.
It may run on certain hardware. Open source in general and OpenDaylight in particular, because it was intended to be a general platform, general purpose platform, sort of splits the difference between those things. It's because it's purely software. It's something that is completely platform agnostic. OpenDaylight was intended to be multi-vendor. It was intended to solve the interoperability problems with multi-vendor networks, and so it's there's value just at that level. But then on top of that, it's do I have to rebuild my entire network architecture because I need now to go buy this new sheet metal? No, I don't. Do I need to buy this entire software stack and re-architect my entire management stack? No, I don't. I can buy piece parts. I can buy, a solution from a particular provider that solves a particular need. It happens to have OpenDaylight in the core, but I don't need to care about that. Or if I want to, if I really want to get into the nitty-gritty because I have a specific need or specific feature that I want to have and I don't happen to have a vendor who's willing to do that for me, I can go do it for myself.
We were talking about collaboration earlier, but also John and I were talking about use cases. We just had Walmart Labs on. At the summit that's coming up, the ODL Summit, in just about, 6 or so weeks at the end of September, are you going to have use cases, proof points that align to what you just talked about? You can do this, you can do that. It's not a this only, that only. Talk to us about some of the use cases that attendees can expect to hear and see at the summit coming up.
Yeah, so we have, I want to say 6 or so keynote speakers, mostly from user organizations who are going to be sharing more of what they do. AT&T started with one project and they've now sort of moved on to multiple different projects. One of the things that I think was actually really interesting is, they started with their own internal plumbing, and they have now moved towards using it as the basis of service offerings to their end user customers. So really, using it as a monetization engine as opposed to just something that is, a purely operational type of thing. The other thing that, as I say, has been really exciting to me is to start seeing the channel ecosystem build out around OpenDaylight. I have always said that SDN is a tremendous opportunity for the channel, especially those who have been really squeezed with hardware margins and things like this, because it's an entirely new revenue stream.
Right. What is the value for the channel with SDN?
As I say, it's an entirely new revenue stream. It's, when you're talking about open source software, the opportunity is taking piece parts and building, either customized solutions or specific solutions around specific use cases for specific verticals. One of the little app developers I was working with really early on had focused on the K through 12 market, and they realized that every school district is completely strapped for cash. They have almost no IT staff because that's not what they're in the business of doing, and they had no way of managing the on-site network stuff from a central office, and SDN was the obvious solution for that. And so they worked, from an operational perspective, but they also developed an app that put the power of the network in the hands of teachers. So teachers could drop connections for certain students who are engaged in online learning. They could monitor the online activities of various students and map that to outcomes. They could have a report that said, Johnny was goofing off and going to these sites when he was supposed to be doing these other things, and so when Johnny's parents come in saying, why are you giving my child a C? He's an A student. There's the report. That apparently was a really, really popular feature. But truly the possibilities here are almost endless, and we're really kind of just starting to scratch the surface.
And I love that you're talking about SDN and a human connection. I think that's one of the most exciting things about technology from any sector.
Yeah.
Talk about the ecosystem as we wrap up here. What's you guys see happening? Give us a prediction or insight into what you guys see happening, what you expect to happen, what you hope to happen.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's reality, it's some real value.
Yeah.
Telcos are seeing the value with NFE. I think China, Telecom, and Comcast are big advocates
Ericsson as well.
of it, bridging that OpenStack. NFE,
Yep.
IoT around the corner. I mean, is there other things I can
IoT
imagine?
definitely is coming up. I mentioned my SI friends who are that's kind of what they're building their business around at this point. As I say, telcos were early adopters, but we're starting to see that more and more in larger enterprise, in transportation, in financials. K through 12 was I mentioned that one particular app, but before I joined the Linux Foundation, that was probably a third of the people I talked to about SDN was K through 12 school districts. Totally unexpected, but there was a very clear and specific need there. So I think that we will start seeing more and more verticals join the fray, and fortunately the ecosystem is already starting to build.
It's interesting too, like when I've seen these shifts in my career, the cream rises to the top, and it's not so much the hype, it's the reality of the value. And we were talking prior in our intro before Walmart came on. Jet.com wasn't even around 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, sold for $3 billion, but they had a unique value proposition that was different, that catapulted them down into a digital business model that was worth billions. So I always get asked, like, where can I make money? As a developer, is always asked. It was the action. And so OpenDaylight, one of the conversations I said was, in the plumbing of like the SDN world, there are unique tech opportunities to apply some of the game-changing enablers down there that could create new opportunities. Do you guys see that happening too as well? I mean, you mentioned these use cases are kind of seem orthogonal, education to finance, telcos. Is that something that you guys see happening? Is that something that's being talked about in your community, that there's real innovation opportunities?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, as they say, what that looks like and what that means is different in different verticals, right?
Yeah.
So obviously K-12 school districts are not in the business of making money, but they have different, metrics and requirements and results that they are required to provide. And so, it's measured differently. It's not measured in money, but the opportunity for innovation is there even so. On the telco side, it's much more about how do I deliver services quickly, how do I monetize those services quickly. In the enterprise, it's somewhere in between. It may or may not be central to the business, but at a minimum, it's about saving operational cost and improving service to the business.
Well, this is the benefit of open software.
Yeah.
An entrepreneur could come in, get their hands dirty, work up something, magic happens, or enterprise could use it to shift their business model.
Yeah.
This seems to be the common pattern that we're seeing on theCUBE.
Yeah, and I will stress again, for the channel, it's an amazing new opportunity.
Yeah.
An amazing new opportunity that they have
channel,
not had.
you mean SIs and value-added resellers and things of that nature?
And so forth. It's an opportunity they haven't had in years.
Because
in
they
the
can
infrastructure market.
customize.
Because they can customize, they
service.
can build services around it, they can build custom solutions around it, consulting that goes along
Well, that's
with it.
consistent with SAP. We saw SAP Sapphire, sorry to interrupt, but the SIs are all kind of finding their own unique swim lanes.
Yeah.
EY is doing their thing, Accenture, PwC, but they're not actually competing. They're picking a differentiation and building core IP around it.
Yeah.
And I think there's a breadth of use cases that you mentioned that can facilitate that collaboration. It's kind of like what Jonathan talked about this morning. It's the versus now becoming the and that we're seeing this trend, and I think that you just
Lisa, thanks for coming on theCUBE, really appreciate it. Give me the final word. For the folks watching who aren't here, what's it all about this year in Silicon Valley compared to the summit and other events here last year? What's the big story this year?
Here in the Valley?
Here at OpenStack SV.
Oh, here at OpenStack SV. Open source is real, and it's providing value, and there are monetization opportunities all across the ecosystem for it.
And it's healthy.
It is healthy.
It's healthy? Okay.
It's very healthy.
Okay, Lisa, thanks for coming on theCUBE, really appreciate it. I'm John Furd, Lisa Martin here in Mountain View in Silicon Valley. You're watching theCUBE. Be right back after this short break.